This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Israel is a terrorist state.
Israel is a
Terrorist state.
Israel is a
Terrorist state.
Israel is a
Terrorist state.
Israel is a
Terrorist state.
Keir Starmer, you can't hide.
We caught you with genocide.
Keir Starmer, you can't hide.
We caught you with genocide.
Iran. Free, free. Free, free. Free, free. Free, free. Free. One. 2. Nuclear facilities have been bombed. The agency put out a statement following Israel's bombing saying any armed attack against nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes constitutes a violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter, international law and the statute of the agency. We know that toxic radiation has been detected inside Natanz, but it doesn't appear to have been released into the atmosphere. These illegal attacks on Iran are just another example of Israel's total disregard for human life. And now, as hundreds of Iranian drones are hitting Tel Aviv, Netanyahu says Israel's bombing campaign will continue for as long as it takes. Trump has praised the attacks and threatened more brutality, more brutal attacks are already planned. Exactly. And in fact, we know that both countries have been planning these attacks for months. In December, Israel bombed all of Syria's air defences. This means Israel's fighter jets can fly over Syrian airspace towards Iran without any risk of attack. We know that since March, Trump has been sending military hardware, including nuclear-capable B-52 bombers, to the base in Diego Garcia, a key launch pad for attacks on Iran. Now, Netanyahu and Trump say these illegal bombings are about stopping the threat of Iran's nuclear program. But both leaders have totally sabotaged peaceful approaches to ensure Iran doesn't develop weapons-grade enriched uranium. Iran agreed to an international framework set up 10 years ago and has been abiding by very stringent inspections and strict protocols. What did Trump do? He totally refused to meet his end of the bargain, to lift crippling sanctions the US has imposed on Iran for decades, and instead he intensified them. And what about Israel? When talks resumed under President Biden, there is strong evidence Israel carried out cyber attacks to sabotage these talks. And this is all total nuclear hypocrisy, because Israel does have nuclear weapons. It totally refuses any weapons inspections. It refuses to admit that it has nuclear weapons. Yet no pressure is put on Israel to disarm. It's clear this is really about securing regime change in Iran. And both Trump and Netanyahu are prepared to cause yet another humanitarian catastrophe to do it. So it's absolutely urgent that the international community, including Britain, puts maximum pressure on Israel and the US to halt this escalation. This means more sanctions on Israel. This means a full arms embargo on Israel now. It means ending diplomatic ties with Israel. And it means supporting the Palestine
Thank you, and thank you first of all to the organizers and to all of you for turning out today. Let us be clear. The time for polite diplomacy is over. The entire world is being held to ransom by the criminal, racist, rogue state of Israel, which we should not forget is a nuclear power, thanks to its allied relationship with apartheid South Africa. The reality is that for Benjamin Netanyahu, his political survival, staying out of jail, is dependent on perpetual war. The countries of Palestine, Iran, Lebanon do not deserve to be used as pawns to keep Benjamin Netanyahu out of jail where he belongs. And let us be clear, this bloodthirsty warmongering is terrible for our economies, where our defense budgets are spiraling out of control at the expense of our education services, of benefits, of the struggle against climate crisis, and of course, at the cost of tens of thousands of human lives. But let us also not forget that the weapons makers like BAE Systems, the tech companies like Palantir, the banks, and crucially, our political parties and our leading politicians are profiting from the bloodshed. Our government, our pathetic senior politicians, including my own Member of Parliament, Keir Starmer. The only good thing about my MP is we don't have to guess when he's lying, because every time his lips move, we know he's lying. Starmer and his crony cabinet not only enable and facilitate Israel's brutal war-making, they are active participants in it. Britain's Royal Air Force flies more intelligence reconnaissance flights over Gaza than the Israeli Air Force itself does. And this is being done in our names, with our tax money. So we say today, loudly and clearly, for Keir Starmer and all our politicians to hear, for the world to hear, don't attack Iran, stop arming Israel. And in the words of Nelson Mandela, whose statue stands just a few yards away from us, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Now we all know that we're gathered in this urgent protest because of the violence unfolding right before our eyes. It's not just an international crisis, it's a moral outrage. It's a political failure, and yes, it is a genocide. For over a year now, we've watched the relentless bombardment of Gaza, families wiped out, hospitals, schools, refugee camps reduced to rubble, journalists targeted, starvation used as a weapon, and yet the most powerful governments do nothing. Worse still, they actually enable it. How dare they speak of peace when they're actually fueling war, and how dare they call for restraint while selling arms and maintaining diplomatic ties? Now we see how this horror risks spilling over with strikes on Yemen, Lebanon and Syria, and bombs falling on Iran. We're staring down the barrel of an even greater catastrophe, a regional war which will count costless lives more and bring unimaginable suffering. This is not about defense, it's not about democracy, it's about domination, about maintaining a brutal system and silencing anyone who dares to resist it. And let me say this clearly, if we do nothing, if we continue in the way that we have, the UK will have blood on its hands. By continuing to arm Israel, continuing to train the IDF, our government will be complicit in genocide. Now, we know that the government have called for de-escalation, we know that they've sanctioned 2 Israeli ministers, and we know that they have had strong words for them. You're absolutely right, this is not enough. It's not enough to stop the spread of war. You know, I once read that the average age of a child being killed in Gaza is something like between 6 and 9 years old because they're too large to carry but too small to run fast enough. That is what's happening. It's not enough. It's not enough. We need sanctions. You know, enough of the bombs, enough of the lies, enough of pretending that Palestinian life is disposable. You know, this isn't about foreign policy, it's about our shared humanity. So we need an immediate ceasefire across the region. We need an end to UK arms sales and the training of the IDF. We need more sanctions on Israel, an end to the blockade on Gaza and the siege that we see on the West Bank. We need to recognise the state of Palestine, because peace is never going to come through war, and security will not come through siege, and justice is never going to come without some form of accountability. So we continue to stand with the people of Gaza, those civilians being bombed across Iran and the Middle East, and we need to keep calling for an end to a genocide, a ceasefire now, and a free Palestine. Thank you.
We all know Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. We know that because of what he has done in the last 18 months to the people of Gaza. The bombing, the starvation, the killing of children. But what he has done in the last 2 days is yet another war crime. Because what he has done is to launch an illegal assault on another country. He has done so deliberately, premeditatedly. There are already sanctions on Iran. There's already all sorts of sanctions that Iran has. Now, what Netanyahu has done is to bomb Iran, to kill generals, to kill nuclear scientists, to kill children, to bomb civilian blocks of flats. He has done that quite deliberately. He's done it quite deliberately because he wants to take the whole of the Middle East into a war, and that is what he is doing.
Shame, shame, shame.
And when they say, Iran has now said, Iran has retaliated by missiles, but he's also said today that the United States, that Britain and that France will all suffer because they all have bases in the region, of course. All the imperialist powers have their troops all over the Middle East. They have naval bases, they have military bases. If Iran attacks those, then Britain will be directly involved in a war in the Middle East. And that is something that everybody in this country should say, we are not prepared to accept. We're not prepared to accept that Netanyahu is bombing at the moment 5 countries, including the Palestinians. We're not prepared to accept that he is bombing with the aid of the British government, with the aid of Trump's government. We need to stop arming Israel immediately. And we need to say that our government, Keir Starmer said yesterday, Israel has the right to defend itself. How many more bloody times have we got to hear that phrase? How is attacking a country nearly 1,000 miles away from you defending yourself? It is a lie, and it is a repeated lie, which is justifying a genocide time and time again. And the only way that Netanyahu is able to do this is precisely because they have not allowed anyone to stop Netanyahu. There has been all the protests that we have had, and our government still continues to send parts for F-35s, to let them use the base at Cyprus, and to use surveillance over Gaza. All of those things should not be allowed. And remember as well, there's a global march to Gaza at the moment. What is happening? What is happening to that global march? The Egyptian state is arresting and torturing the people on that global march.
Shame!
These people are all in the same camp. They all want to destroy the Palestinians. They all want to destroy any opposition to imperialism. They all want to do those things. Final point I'd like to make is this. I've always been against nuclear weapons and against nuclear power. But I have to say I'm absolutely sick of the small number of countries that have nuclear weapons telling other countries they're not allowed to have them, and telling them that this is a justification for war. We don't want nuclear in Iran. We don't want it in Israel, which is the only Middle East country that does have nuclear weapons. We don't want them in Britain either. Let's get rid of nuclear weapons throughout the world.
And who was not bad? We Iranians feel like we've been waiting our whole lives for the US or Israel to attack us. We have never been allowed to live, to breathe, as we wait for their bombs to fall. Now they are falling and we are not bowed. To be Iranian is to be constantly demonized. We will not be bowed. We are constantly told that the crimes of our oppressors are actually our own crimes. Israel secretly develops illegal nuclear arms, but Iran is the one accused of that. Israel attacks Iran without any provocation, but the media and politicians say Israel is defending itself. Israel kills, terrorizes, oppresses, but we are called rogue. In the face of lies and slander, we will not be bowed. I lived through the horrors of the Iran-Iraq war. We Iranians suffered unimaginably, but we are not bowed. When the Americans came to attack Iraq, I marched with you to stop it happening. Iranians opposed the attack on our old enemy. We know the West has no solutions to the Middle East problems. And since they destroyed Iraq, we have known it was inevitable that they would eventually come for us. But we were never bowed. We are heartbroken now that it's happening. We long for it to stop. But Iranians don't sit dwelling on broken hearts. We raise our heads and we walk forward. We will not be bowed. Politicians here in Westminster have jumped to demand de-escalation. So far it seems they only mean Iran should not defend itself. We want peace, but we will not be bowed. If you want de-escalation, stop Israel's criminal wars. Stop the flow of arms, stop the intelligence and logistical support, respect our rights to defend ourselves. Arrest Netanyahu! If you want de-escalation, give Iran its rights. Give Iran full and equal membership of the international community. End the sanctions which have been starving and killing us for decades. Respect Iran's right under the Non-Proliferation Treaty to have a full and unrestricted civilian nuclear industry. The criminals in Israel must be stopped. Their crimes will only end when every one of their neighbors is independent and secure and strong. Palestine must be free and secure and strong. Iran must be free and secure and strong. Long live Iran!
Thanks very much. Thank you, friends, brothers and sisters. All my life I've been marching against war and against nuclear weapons. I can think back to when I was a teenager and I marched here from Aldermaston to London as part of the campaign for nuclear disarmament. I was just a young teenager when I did that. We marched against the Vietnam War when I was a student. and I was arrested, as it happens, at Grosvenor Square when we were demonstrating against America and against the secret British involvement in that war as well, and of course marched about the Iraq War and the Gulf War. So all my life I've had this experience that the way the country that I live in and the country that I'm allied to, America, has thought to solve its problems through war, that it's only ever done negotiations as some kind of cover, but in actual fact has tried to, put it inverted commas, solve problems by bombing and killing people. Go back to the Vietnam War. Was anybody tried for that, for the crimes of the Vietnam War? No, of course they weren't. They killed maybe as many as 500,000, maybe more, 1 million people. They spread defoliants all over the ground and poisoned the ground, poisoned the plants that people are still suffering from in Vietnam. Anybody punished for it? Absolutely not, no. So if you go again to the wars in the Middle East that our country and America has engaged in, has anybody ever been punished for those? Not at all, of course not. They killed how many people in Iraq? How many people? We don't even know, do we? Yes, millions, hundreds of thousands, millions. They don't know and they don't care. That's the way they behave, that they assume that those of us sitting here in Britain, we don't know and we don't care. If you're white like me, they assume, like they assume, that people of colour are inferior, and it entitles them to kill and bomb people, and we won't count it and we won't know. They assume it. And we know that the Israelis themselves, that is their attitude. Their attitude to the Palestinians and to Arab people in general is that they're inferior, that they're not there. And if they are there, they shouldn't be there. And that we are supposed to come in with that and believe that and accept that. So I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I wrote a poem about the idea that somehow or other we don't count people out there. And I wrote this, in fact, for the Iraq War. And so I'll read it to you now. When they do war, they forget how to count. They forget how to count, and that's how they do it. They come, they kill, they go. No numbers, no names, they disappear them. They vanish them. And that's how they do it. They come, they kill, they go. And it's worth it, they say. That's what they say. It's worth it. It's worth it, believe us. If you forget how to count, if you forget the numbers, if you forget the names, if you forget the faces. When they do war, they forget how to count. They forget how to count, and that's how they do it. But we're counting. Watch us. We're counting. Listen, we're counting and we count. Listen, we're counting and we count. Listen, we're counting and we count. Thank you very much.
Free, 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 from the belly of the beast, from the belly of the beast. We are here today to demand an end to Zionist aggression in our region. For decades, the Zionist entity has violated our region's sovereignty, our dignity, our right to enact our popular and political will. In the early hours of Friday morning, the Zionist entity of Israel expanded its genocidal campaign onto the Iranian people in a desperate final attempt to fragment and wreak havoc on our entire region. Shame! But over the last 20 months, we have witnessed the promise of regional unity. Our people in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen have shown us what living and acting on your principles truly means. We know that since its inception, the Zionist entity of Israel has been a project of Western imperialism. It was designed to liquidate any threat to European and US interests. This is what we have been witnessing for years in the form of suffocating sanctions and relentless warmongering against Iran and any state in the region that dares to exercise its sovereignty and serve the interests of its own people. Despite what the Trump administration claims, the Zionist entity's attack on Iran was entirely coordinated and greenlit by the United States. We know very well how the US and its allies use quote-unquote negotiations not to end wars, but to force our people into submission, but we will not submit!
Thank you, friends. I want to thank you for coming out again at 24 hours notice, several thousand strong. Now, friends, for more than 600 days since Israel began to unleash its genocidal assault upon Palestinians in Gaza, we have warned that if it continued to be granted impunity by Western powers, continued to be supported and armed in its violations of international law, in its violations of every norm of human conduct, that it would act in a way that risked a wider war that would engulf the entire Middle East and endanger the whole world. And over the course of its genocide, Western governments, including our own, shame upon them, have ignored those warnings, continue to support and arm Israel, even as it slaughtered over 55,000 Palestinians, destroyed every part of the infrastructure of life in Gaza, forcibly starved an entire population, attacked and invaded Lebanon, killing over 2,700 people, blinding and maiming children by sending explosive electronic devices into a civilian population, bombed Syria, and now launches a major attack on Iran, including the bombing of residential areas and the killing of more civilians. Now, yesterday, our Foreign Secretary found himself unable even to condemn this latest violation of international law, this assault on the sovereignty of another state. Instead, repeated the tired and grotesque mantra that Israel has a right to defend itself, the same disgraceful lie that Israel has tried to foist on the world to justify its genocide for the last 20 months. Now, we all know what Israel is doing. It is using this moment to extend its power, to extend the power of the US across the region, and to try to deflect attention from what it continues to do in Gaza, where right now, 27 slaughtered overnight. Right now, Palestinians continue to be massacred, continue to be forced to fight for scraps of food delivered by a sham humanitarian agency, being shot at and killed by IDF soldiers who, of course, have the right to defend themselves from crowds of hungry people. So Israel has chosen this moment to attack Iran, a moment where its forced starvation of Palestinians and the grotesque genocidal rhetoric of its ministers has become, finally, too much, even for some of its staunchest supporters to stomach. A moment where it became increasingly isolated, with growing calls across the global community, including in our Parliament, for a total arms embargo and meaningful sanctions. 2 weeks ago, we even saw a Tory MP standing up in Parliament calling for a full arms embargo and saying if this were any other state, then MPs would be discussing a full-scale military intervention to stop that state in its tracks. Friends, 2 weeks ago, as we surrounded Parliament in our thousands calling for an arms embargo, we released an opinion poll that showed by a margin of 4-1 the British public support our demands for that arms embargo, support our demands for divestment by every council, support our demands for every supermarket to stop selling Israeli goods. Now in the face of that public pressure, we saw our government introduce sanctions against 2 Israeli ministers, Ben Jamal and Smotrich. Their actions were not enough. They were built on the lie that the problem is some extremists within the Israeli government. The truth is that successive Israeli governments have for decades imposed upon the Palestinian people a system of apartheid and colonization across all of historic Palestine. The truth is that Israel is a state founded upon an ideology of Zionism that says that only one people, Jewish people, have rights and indigenous Palestinians no rights at all. And friends, the final truth is this: when you establish a racist regime of ethnic and religious supremacy, then you can only sustain it if you teach an entire population to believe that those over whom they exercise power are less than human. That is why we see opinion polls like the one released 2 weeks ago that revealed that 47% of Israeli Jews believe that Israel has the right to kill every Palestinian living in the towns and cities it occupies. That 82% of Jewish Israelis support the entire ethnic cleansing of every Palestinian from Gaza, and that 56% of Jewish Israelis support the expulsion of every Palestinian citizen of the State of Israel. And here's the final truth. That mindset, that racist mindset, will not change unless Israel is held to account, unless its impunity ends, unless it is treated like a pariah state that no one sells arms to, that nobody trades with, that no artist or cultural figure will perform in, that is removed from every international arena. So friends, Israel hopes that by provoking a war with Iran, it will silence those demands for boycott, divestment and sanctions. We must not allow that to happen. We must ramp up all of our demands and reassert the truth that if Israel continues to be allowed impunity, it will continue to threaten world peace. So friends, on Tuesday of next week, on June the 17th, we will take those demands in mass demonstrations to arms factories in Portsmouth, in Sheffield and in Kent. Join us. And next Saturday, we will be back here in the streets of our capital, hundreds of thousands strong, marching once more to call for an end to the genocide and an end to all UK complicity in the oppression of the Palestinian people. We do not stop. We never stop until the entire infrastructure of oppression is ground into the dust of history and the Palestinian people are finally free. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Thank you.